And just like that, just like that, just like that, we are here. The fourth installment on the Getting Ish Done podcast, but the third on this management string that we're on. How's it going, Dr. Thunder?
It is all right. How are you doing, man?
I am doing very well. I'm doing very well. I'm coming live and direct from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The internet seems to be holding up. I've done 3 streams from here so far. I was on the Bernard Riley show. I did a stream about immigration, about the immigrants, if you will, the psychology of the immigrants also. And this is the third one. And so far, so good. The internet has held up. I heard some interesting things about the internet over here, but so far it's holding up just as well as the one in Ghana. How are things in Ohio?
Things in Ohio are okay. It is more spring like. I went for a ride yesterday. I took my son for a ride on my motorcycle
Mm.
for the first time in the season, and then today we went for uh, a ride on our bikes. We've got nice bike trails around, so that was very nice.
Very, very good. Shout out to the K Business Podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. For the $10 super chat. Dom DeMarco, indeed. So, as I just mentioned, this is the third installment in the series on management. This is the third and the final installment, at least for this particular, for the time being, if you will. And I think that it's appropriate to start with a bit of a summary. Well, highlights, if you will. I'm not going to summarize everything, but highlights. In the first part, one of the key things that you mentioned, Dr. Thunder, is the type of leader that one is and how important it is to know between type 1 and type 2. Do you want to give a quick, brief synopsis on what those are? To me, what it means is, the type 1 is the person whom can get everything done by themselves. They know what needs to be done. They break it down in terms of the tasks that need to be done. They show up and they deliver, they delegate these different tasks to the team. They say, hey, you do this, you do this, you do this, and we'll come back. And when we reconvene, we'll get the rest of this stuff done. While type 2 is more interested in getting the input as to how best to get things done. And by doing so, they figure out whom does what best, and then they assign the tasks that way, and so on and so forth. There'll be more meetings, more communication in the type 2 type person. Is that more or less what that type 1 and type 2 thing is?
Yeah, and usually they're referred to as A and B, but type 1 and type 2 have heard it that way too. And actually, it's interesting. I was on O'Shea's channel for his what's the name of that? I'll think of it later. It was a
Mm.
panel discussion, um, and I brought up the type A, type B, uh, leadership styles, and then after that stream, he did an episode of Celebrity Junk where he dug down into the whole type A, type B
Mm.
leadership thing, which I thought was really really good. So if you want to maybe dig a little deeper into that topic, you certainly can go back and check out earlier episodes of Getting Ish Done. But also, O'Shea has a fairly recent video where he kind of focuses on that.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Shout out to Carl for president. Shout out to Nicer. Shout out to Prince. Is that Willingham? And
Yeah.
the usual gang in here. I thought I saw Snuggles in here as well. So, also in that first episode, I talked specifically about how to manage different types of people, okay, and how the, shall we say, remunerations or compensations are going to differ, and how you need to understand where people are trying to go so that you can compensate them accordingly. And also knowing that if you have this one particular dimension, let's say creativity, that people are going to differ in that regard, some of which require a lot of freedom and some which you need to kind of tighten up on, that kind of a thing, right? And that was just, we talked a lot about those topics in the first stream, if you will. And then we realized that our time was exhausted, and then we moved on. But the second stream, we talked, or I started with my idea about, change management, the management of change, that there's going to be change in team members. Hence, you want to create a system based on an approximation of the best practices of the best people, right? Rather than just depend heavily on that star player, you want to say, what is this star player doing that's different from our typical way of doing things? And adjust your playbook, your recipe book, if you will, to best approximate what they're doing, because they're not going to be there forever. They're going to leave, or they're going to change their roles, which is the other aspect of change, which is growth. You need to understand how they want to grow, where they're trying to get to, help them to do that so that they stay within the organization and they can help your organization grow. And then also that there may be changes even in terms of the goals or the means by which things are getting done. And one thing that I mentioned in that whole scheme of change there is that you want to manage change by emphasizing what is remaining the same, right? Like, hey, son, I know we're moving from here to there, but but dad still loves you, whatever, whatever. But basically, it's the idea that if you're changing the means and methods, you're changing software, you just emphasize why this is just going to make you more of the same. Oh, that thing about how we like to be very efficient? This is even going to make us even more efficient. That thing we're always complaining about, how we need to send 3 emails out and make 4 phone calls, and we said all this duplication of effort. Rather, would it not be great if we could do things in just one place? Hey, this new software now makes it such that we can do that. Okay, we're still the team that likes to make the best, do the best for our clients, on and on and on. Whatever your core values are and whatever it is that you've been striving for, make sure you emphasize that 90% of what you're talking about is going to be about what is staying the same. And then you just mention what has changed, which is, something little, because typically it is something little. And any comments on that regarding the human psychology of that change aspect? Because you had a few things to mention too on the last stream. But first, this whole idea of change, either beginning from this idea of, well, if you're going to be changing something, don't emphasize what's changing, just tell people what's remaining the same, and they're more malleable than you think. But if you emphasize the change, all of a sudden, a tiny little change, like give it a change in password, becomes a big cause for resistance.
Well, one of the reasons why you don't want to focus on what it is that you're leaving behind is that there are people that thought of those ideas and that implemented those ideas that you're letting go of. And so what that means is that you are moving away from something that someone had a lot of sweat equity involved in. And that's, hey, that's probably not what you want to do. More of a focus on where we're going and less of a focus on what we're leaving behind. You hear preachers use this illustration frequently. Like the windshield in the front of the car is bigger than the one in the back of the car, because the intention is not to be looking back as much as you are looking forward. These kinds of there's a lot of holes in that analogy, but you also understand what folks are trying to get at with that. Like we don't have eyes in the back of our head, because we're not supposed to be looking backwards. We're supposed to be looking where we're going, that kind of stuff. But yeah.
This dovetails with something else that you mentioned in the last stream, which is the not stifling, if you will, perhaps I could use that, the ideas, at least publicly, the ideas of idea generators, right? Otherwise, they will not come back to you with those ideas. You use the examples of, junior professors, I believe maybe that's what they're called, and the whole tenure process and so on and so forth. But I don't know if you wanted to say a little bit more on that, because it dovetails right in with this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the what's up, Sebastian Ritchie? What's up, Nicer? So saw a couple of hellos. Yeah, so Wait a minute. Okay. So one of the things that you don't want to do is like if say for instance you're in a meeting, um, and as part of the meeting, one of your idea people, they throw out an idea, and you just like you know steal their soul by by crushing the idea in front of everyone. Um, you probably don't want to do that. You don't want to do it for several reasons. Because one is you shouldn't be a jerk. That's not really
Mm,
a good thing to be, a good way to be.
mm,
But on the other hand of it, from the practical perspective, is if you crush their idea in front of people,
mm,
then they're going to be less likely to come with those ideas, and you need the ideas.
mhm,
Um, you need the ideas, and something I you know something I try hard to do is when someone comes with an idea, I feel like my job is to tell them yes,
mm,
is to find a way to tell them yes. That's what I think my job is, like to try to find a way to say yes, even if it's a really simple idea, even if it's something that's redundant, even if it's something that you know, in some cases that I think is like naive or just a dumb idea, I still try
mm,
to find a way to say yes. You know, um, and there's some nuancing. There's some some massaging
mm,
that has to go on in order to do that. Uh, Goodness, it can be challenging, but it's so worth it because you
mm,
know, if someone feels free to express and share ideas, they're probably going to share some dogs too. But
mhm,
but the
mhm,
next idea might be the uh, with the goose that laid the golden egg or something. So
mhm.
yeah,
That is key. Something that I mentioned in the first stream is with regards to the creativity aspect, that dimension along which people vary, is that a lot of times the people that generate a lot of ideas, they tend not to know which is great and which is not.
right.
Okay? And it is your job as the leader to always have your eyes focused on what the goal is.
Mm.
Okay? And to be able to create a space whereby they can always come and give you these ideas. They throw all these ideas on there. It's you go back and you sift through, let's say it's one session of idea generation, the good ones, or in the manner which you just mentioned, that they come through, you find a way to always say yes, so that they come back with more, and then you find wow. Or it may even be later. Or let me complete the sentence. Let me not do this thing where I'm not completing sentences. You found wow. This is a great idea for solving this particular problem which you're trying to solve. Or it could be later. Let's say, for example, they come to you with ideas and you're like, this might be some kind of wonky thing, and you say yes to it. You kind of contort yourself and you do your whole creative thing and nuance the thing just so you can say yes. Later on down the line, it may be the case that you're like, oh my God, that thing he told me 3 months ago that didn't seem quite relevant. This is the perfect thing that we need now to solve this particular problem that we're facing, to overcome this particular hurdle. And I'm sure you've seen this kind of thing happen before. But in this regard, also, you can comment on anything I just said, but also, is it useful for you as well? Because when I hear you say things like that, what comes to mind is things like, when you say things like, I like to say yes. What comes to mind is certain ways in which I like to challenge myself, right? Two things come to mind. Number one, the ways in which I like to challenge myself, and then number two, that principle of always saying yes to opportunities in general. Generally, it has to do with
Yeah.
clients coming to you and saying do something, and then you always say yes. But also a team member coming to you with an idea. Maybe you're not ready for it. Maybe you're not expanding towards that direction yet, so on and so forth. But you say yes. But there's this way in which I like to always challenge myself to to be creative, if you will, to incorporate, to appropriate, to just kind of have all these accretions coming in, and to be able to just kind of encapsulate them regardless, find a way to do it. So in a purely mental exercise regard, if you will, where it's like, this is good for me, this is good for me, that way I'm not so rigid, if you will. Is that any part of that playing with you as well, or any comments on anything I just said?
Sebastian Ricci. Not to misdirect, but would like a segment relating to confounding or co-founding. How to find co-founders, so collaborators, set boundaries with money and power. I'm trying to find a team, and I'm coming across slim pickings. Excuse me if this has been discussed. We'll get to that after I answer. Okay, so I interviewed the great ethnic vocalist and multi-instrumentalist Uyanga Bold last night. That video went up on my channel this morning. And one of the topics that we discussed is the power of yes. Now, I mentioned that in our conversation because she has an unusual skill set, and she's found a way to, I mean, she's in all kind of movies. She worked on the movie Milan. I mean, dozens of movies, video games. There's a sample library that's all her. Quite incredible with this sort of niche kind of skill set that she has. And we talked a little bit about this whole the kind of pyramid thing where in the beginning of your career you have to say yes to everything because you don't know how you're going to pay the light bill. And then as you progress, you try to start to sort of specialize. You start to try to get really good at only the things that you can do, and you try to delegate other stuff, right? Or you just let go of that stuff, and you're making enough money so that you can tell people no. But in the beginning, you have to say yes to everything. You're not born with experience, right? And so what's interesting about this is that this is sort of maybe sort of the other side of that. Maybe one of the reasons why I am sensitive and desire to say yes to people that are posing questions is because I have often, been on the other side of that. I've been the person trying to fight for, this seems the wrong thing, but trying to fight for attention. Trying to here are my ideas. This is what I can do. I've been trying to prove what it is that I'm capable of doing, and that and so having someone that is willing to entertain and wants to say yes seems like I'm automatically serving people that are wired the same way I am.
I see.
And then there's that, like you were talking about, the creativity thing is, so there's like this opportunity to develop a certain skill set in yourself with respect to saying yes in becoming larger, exploring the extremities of the box that you're in, so yeah, so something like that.
And no, that's very good. That's very good. And I need to check out that interview that you did. And Sebastian has asked this question a couple of times in the chat. I have seen this question about co-founders. The fact that you're finding slim pickings, well, that is that is to be expected. Okay. Not a lot of people are out there thinking, oh, I would like to be a co-founder or collaborate or even start something myself, right? So that is not, and then they have to be good, and you guys have to be aligned. Now, this kind of a thing, and you also mentioned roles and money. In other words, how do you delegate power? This kind of a thing is almost like a marriage in the sense that it is not it's not the kind of thing where you just go find the right piece in the parts store for your bicycle and it fits and you're like, oh yeah, all I need was this particular. Yeah, you have the 3 millimeter MP6 whatever. Okay, good, I got the 3 millimeter MP6, I fit it in. No, otherwise marriages will be that way as well. And it's not just the kind of thing where you just meet somebody, oh, by chance, like, oh yeah, this guy, yeah, just check, oh, let's go get married. It doesn't work that way because there's going to be a lot of time spent with each other, just like marriage. There's going to be a lot of, and I know I'm not getting to how, okay. I'm just talking about the difficulty and the ways in which, if you use this marriage analogy, then you begin to see, well, how and where not to go and where not to expect to find, right? So you're looking for someone whom has already been vetted. So maybe it's someone that is a friend of yours in the past, right? So you guys already have an understanding whereby you have shared values, but your personalities are different. That's the key thing there. Your values are the same, okay? You know he's not gonna stab you in the back, blah blah blah. You guys are hard workers, blah blah blah. But your personalities are different. He's more of a tech geek, and you're more of a salesperson, or whatever it may be, right? So the first thing I would say there is that it is very much like a marriage because a lot of time going to be spent together. There's going to be a lot of rough times that you guys are going to need to get past. Shared values are very important. You guys need a history together already, right? That's why I say it is like marriage, and that's why you need someone that's vetted, either someone from the past or someone from your network whom you can say, hey, what kind of a person is this, so on and so forth. And then there is the aspect of immediately you don't want to be you want to create it, and that's why it goes to the whole personalities being different. You want to have very clear lanes defined right from the beginning. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of problems that come up. You want Peter Thiel talks about this when he collaborated with Elon Musk to found PayPal, right? Now these are massive egos in the room here, right? Someone collaborating with Elon Musk, it's like, come on, you can imagine. But the way in which they kind of solved that was people have their own lane, okay, and you don't have this whole kind of thing where we're a new company or we're just starting, so everybody kind of does everything and everyone is checking in with everyone else, and it's like, no, it's just going to create competition, it's going to create friction, and again, just like a marriage, right, where you want people to have their lanes in the marriage as well. You want clearly defined roles, otherwise you're going to have all the problems which are constantly enumerated here in this part of YouTube. So I'll let you, Dr. Thunder, perhaps comment on anything I just said, plus whatever came to mind regarding this question, and perhaps also we can get more into the how. But number one, it is like a marriage, have clearly defined roles, okay, and a history. If not a history, but someone that can vet that history is absolutely key.
Yeah, often it's the case that you will have to rely on some sort of referral in a situation like this. And often it's the case that, like, someone that knows two people, they think, you know what, these two cats would be really great together in a show. I think actually, the Fresh and Fit, I think
Hmm.
they were introduced by Solo TV 84. And you see how their thing is happening now. Now he knew stuff about both of them, and then he was able to say, "Hey, this looks like a good thing." So I guess that's sort of like what, like an arranged marriage or something. Um, which these days takes a lot of you know it takes a lot of hits, for being oppressive to women and all this kind of stuff. But if we're honest, if more marriages were arranged, then the divorce would probably be lower. Um, and of arranged marriages, a very small percentage of them fail. compared to everything else. But one thing I thought was rather interesting is that marriage seems to be on your brain for some for some reason, and I and everyone can see the ring on your hand there. Congratulations, sir.
Yeah, I think it was well known that that I was engaged, if you will. And then I
Yes.
posted in the community tab, and O'Shea also kind of posted on his community tab. Shout out
Yep.
to O'Shea Duke Jackson, of the traditional wedding. That's why I'm in Africa. I'm in Ethiopia right now for the
Mhm.
until the end of the month. But I was in Ghana, and on Instagram, go check out my Instagram. By the way, you guys just type in my name, Iko Gammon. I posted some pictures so that you guys can get all your curiosity satisfied in that regard. But thank you very much, Dr. Thunder. And yeah, we shall continue to see how this develops and so on and so forth. But yes,
I
marriage
foresee.
is on the
I
brain.
foresee. Yes, I foresee in future episodes more marriage analogies. I foresee that for some reason. I can see that. My eyes are closed, but yes, I can still see that. Okay, that's good.
You're killing me. You're killing me. Shout out to Young Swift in the house over there, still doing his thing. However, I think that what you mentioned about referrals. Do you have any experience with this in terms of you trying to start something? Now, it may not be as something, let's say, as long-term monumentous, or maybe it is. Maybe starting a band is that kind of a thing. But
Mm.
getting recommendations, and there's key members of a band, and then you're the hired guns, if you will. Now that breaks down in different bands in different ways, right?
Mhm.
um, but have you ever had any experience in terms of you need to start something, you need to find somebody, right, to help you or to start this thing with you, and then you go about doing it the recommendation way? Because Sebastian, what we're getting at here is this is a marriage. You are not going to just find somebody to marry like that, okay? And you need to go out there. If you don't have somebody that you have a relationship with already, you need to go out there and start asking a bunch of people in the relevant areas, which I believe you're already kind of doing here. And I think it's some kind of technical thing that you're trying to do, right? And that there are spaces that facilitate this, either online and so on and so forth. But Dr. Thunder, do you have any experience in this regard in terms of going out there and trying to get referrals for something that you're trying to start?
Yes. Very often am I soliciting referrals. It is often that I have a gig and maybe one of my regular guys can't do the gig. And so the first thing that I do is I ask the guy that can't make it, I ask him for some thoughts. But at this point, that's not usually my approach. I have such a extensive network and have worked with so many musicians that I will personally know the people that I would want to sub, and I know, I have a short list of qualifications that they have to have.
Hmm.
So stuff like be a professional, you know, um, show up on time, wear the right clothes. Obviously, I'm assuming that the musicianship is at the level that they can play the music.
Hmm.
Um, so there are certain skills involved with that. My music tends to be very challenging um, and rhythmically syncopated, mixed meter, and all kinds of stuff. Right. So uh, so the level of musicianship needs to be at a
Hmm.
certain level to be able to do that. And then everything else is just about sort of personality. Then I know certain musicians that don't get along with other musicians. Fairly recently, um, uh, I was about to you know, s- uh, to start a regular gig. This was, I don't know, months ago, a year ago or something. And one of the guys in the band, he asked me, he says, well, who are the other guys going to be? And really, he was concerned that I was going to book a particular person, and so then we talked about that, and it was not my plan to book that person. He was concerned about being in the band, who had been a longtime friend of his, but had, they just didn't get along. So you learn that kind of stuff. Something that happened. This is an interesting sort of window into this whole sort of collaboration, or what was the word?
Co-founding.
Yeah, co-founder. So I had two graduate students of mine. This was years and years ago. Within the same week, say almost the same exact thing to me, and that was, "Hey, you have great material. I mean, you should do a book, and I will do anything I can do to help you." Okay, and yeah, so we started collaborating, and it took about 6 years to finish everything. We could have probably done it faster than that, but all of us were busy. And then folks move. Hey, blind guy, his wife, and their life, $50 super chat. Congratulations to you and your bride, Ike. Much love and success on the union for many years to come. Yes, congratulations.
Thank you very much, blind guy, and his wife.
Yeah, that's right. And their life too. Their life. That's.
Oh yeah, everything.
It's everything. It's everything. So yeah. So what ended up happening is, I brought those guys on, and I actually gave them authorship credit. I mean, it's my my material, but I wouldn't have been able to complete it, not in a timely manner, without the team. And so I was like, okay, I'll divide up the percentages. Now I'm the primary listed, but their names are also on the book. And so, yeah, I mean, these kind of situations. Now I would have said no to them if I didn't know them as well as I did. They were both studying with me, and I knew them prior to them studying with me, and had seen what kind of work ethic that they had. And so I knew this was going to be a good situation.
I see. So, at the risk of sounding vague, networking, such as what you're doing right now, Sebastian, is super key, because you mentioned that you don't have people that you have people around right now that you have had a long-term relationship with. You mentioned people being in England and so on and so forth. You're in Canada now, I believe. So it's going to be difficult. However, as a result of, and by networking, I mean, relevant networking, going to the right places, and then just kind of exposing yourself to certain kinds of opportunities, right? You join certain kinds of associations. I mentioned certain online groups that are all about learning about technical startups, okay? And so on and so on and so forth. In my particular recent journey, I've been looking for, if you will, a chief operating officer type, which I think I've recently found, okay? And perhaps we can, I can send you some information about, because there's a group of people, as a result of me networking and finding little weird spaces on the internet, I found this particular individual, and there are other associated people whom are perhaps more technical and so on and so forth, which may be more in line with what you're doing. But I found this person, and I'm giving them this, to the whole point about giving them a particular lane. What they're doing is, they're handling the HR side of things. I'm trying to hire on some people internationally, that is. I actually interviewed someone over here in Ethiopia. It's going to be remote work, engineering work, but remote. So he found these people for me. He's organizing the interviews and so on and so forth, the training that we're going to do. He's paying them. Okay, so I pay him, he pays them. He's handling he's handling the employment at this stage, almost like an employment agency. Okay, so everything is working out just great. Initially, though, the reason why I went with him is because we just happened to, hit it off online. We're having conversations about ideas and so on and so forth. I get a feel for the kind of person he is. We're talking philosophy and mathematics and physics and this and that and the other. And he's a PhD also. And so as a result, okay, I'm getting the feel for the kind of person that this person is and so on and so forth. Now, this is just one person out of hundreds that I've, meet online and in other kind of networking forums, or is it fora or whatever. So it's going to be a needle in a haystack type of thing, but I will go ahead and I'll drop, I don't know if you want to drop an email, or go ahead and email me. You can find my email on the channel, and I'll kind of, since you're looking for someone technical, let's talk behind the scenes, in other words, because I think that this person knows some other people that are on the technical end of things. And as you would expect, technical people are weird. So you got to be able to handle the weird. But there was definitely an idea, an aspect of, we clearly hammered out, this is your lane, this is how you get paid, this is where you have power, and this is where I have power. That is absolutely 100% key, especially when there's money involved. And that's why you need to have someone that you can trust and communicate with. And perhaps even the personality test is important. Depend on your personality, and I don't want to be all super biased about stuff, but you might want to find someone who's intuitive, so you don't have to tell them everything all the time or tell them every instance. Why are you laughing, Dr. Thunder?
Because that is super irritating. It's like, figure it out already.
Exactly. It's
you have
the kind of thing I say is like,
I have Google.
Yeah, you want to find someone who's perhaps intuitive, and therefore, you don't want to have the perfect. I think the perfect. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that of what young Swift can go ahead and say what the perfect personality type is, but the intuitive part I think is key. Now, if you can find an intuitive thinker, even better, right? If and then depending on the role, maybe you want an introvert versus an extrovert, right? But there are these communities online that are all about that Myers-Briggs type thing, for example, which is where I found these people kind of coincidentally, right? So I found people that know what they are, right, and are into that kind of a thing. Plus, I just kind of hit it off. I wasn't looking for a COO over there, but I found one over there, right? So point being, go ahead and do some more networking. Hit up my email. I'll kind of connect you with some of the more technical people in this team here. But the intuitive thing, the example that I give is, you tell somebody, okay, like, I don't know, maybe you're married. Here comes another.
There it is.
You're like, you know what? I don't like when there's stuff where you keep your papers on the kitchen table. Like, you have a desk. Well, I made you a little desk area over there. You have your little office. That's for your stuff, right? You're like, okay, cool. You see, an intuitive person will know, okay, it's not just the papers he doesn't like there. I shouldn't have my bag, my shoe, my jacket, any of my personal effects need to therefore go where they belong. Keep in other words, they're going to have concepts or principles or high level kind of directives that say, okay, this means keep the public spaces free of personal things. A non-intuitive person might the next day start putting their cell phones and their keys and teacups there. And you're like, and then you got to tell them about the cell phones and the keys and the teacups. And in other words, they tend to do more of the, if I were to give them, if I put a positive light on it, they do more induction, where they need to run they need to see many different examples, and then they blanket it. An intuitive person, they just need one example, and they can kind of generalize, which is more of a deductive type of thing. And then, and I think it's super key especially if you're an intuitive yourself, to work with other intuitives. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. But I don't know any other comments on that. And then there's this other question that, and by the way, feel free to hop on. I leave the comment. Let this on the comment section or the chat section or whatever you call it. There is the link to the stream. So hop on and ask your questions. And perhaps even Sebastian Ritchie, if you want to do a back and forth on this, you can hop on. But any thoughts, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. The intuitive thing is valuable. That's important. You know, the way that we connected is interesting. Let's see, how did we connect? I think I just reached out to you, and you connected me with Solomon Jones. But you know, we got connected, and we did the first interview on my channel. And I, shared the video with you, and you put some clips on your channel and everything. And then we were like, oh, let's, I think maybe I jumped on a few times on your platform just because I'd been watching, and then I was like, hey, let's do a show. And then we tried it, and it worked well. So then we kept doing it. And then we increased the frequency of it, and so if something was to happen in the future that seemed to be a good opportunity for us to collaborate on, we would know enough about each other from collaborating in this format to be able to, feel like we could take a reasonable risk. And trust in each other, So the people that are around you, they're always evaluating you, and you're always sort of evaluating them. One thing that I tell my students frequently is that there are people that I went to college with that, I have a lot of history with them, and if I had a good experience with them, that's going to make it very easy for me to reach back and say, hey, I'm going to choose this person. I mean, we have the Ohio State Jazz Festival, for instance, okay, at Ohio State, and it was last week, and it was great. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The headliner was Victor Wooten and his brothers. It was great. It was wonderful. I'm also glad it's over because it's a lot of planning. But frequently has been the case that not necessarily for the headliner, although I knew I had other dealings with everyone that I asked to come and play. But what was I saying?
People coming together, working together.
Yeah. The point is that if I had some kind of funky situation with somebody, I'm not going to ask them to come to the festival. It's just not going to happen because it's too much of a risk. I have to be able to depend on them. They need to be able to do exactly what it is that I'm asking them to do, and I can't be chasing them around. I can't be constantly calling them a bunch of times and they're not returning phone calls. They're being wishy-washy with when their plane is going to come in and stuff, or, how they're going to travel. I have to know all of the details. I need to know what's going on, and I cannot be looking for people. That's just, I'm not going to do it. And frankly, there are certain folks from when I was in college, and they were totally unprofessional. And that's the only knowledge I have of them. That's the only memory I have. And I'm not going to risk it. I'm not going to be like, well, everybody deserves a second chance. Yeah, that's true. No. But you get the second chance with somebody else. I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
somebody that that I can depend on.
yeah. Everyone deserves a second chance, 100%. There's a lot of people in the world. If you mess up over here, go try to reestablish yourself, start afresh, move to a new town, whatever it may be, right? In order to get that second chance that you're talking about. Mr. Ritchie, how are you doing, sir?
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
No,
hey
no
guys, how are
problem,
you
no
doing
problem.
today?
Um, do you want to share some of your experience with regards to going about doing whatever it is you're doing? How much of
Um,
it you might be able to divulge or be able to give a general, just share your experience with regards to, trying to start this thing, trying to manage the process, and as you say, trying to find a co-founder here.
yeah, so essentially what I'm trying to learn from you established men right now is that I'm trying to find my own group that I can put forth a business idea and grow. And I've had issues in the past with um, gathering like-minded people and trying to establish things with them. A couple of years ago, I had rallied several of my friends, all of which were complaining about where they were in their own lives. Most of them, most of them being successful in their career, but that extra money, that passive money, that freedom money wasn't in play.
Mm-hmm.
And I rallied these gentlemen and I started in a kind of like our own little hive mind group and figuring out ways of uh, obtaining resources, money, businesses, land, etc. And it's always I find myself always in the same type of cycle because actually that, to be honest, that was the second time, but I always find where I'm with a group, everybody's gun ho, but then when it comes down to doing the nitty gritty, nobody is delivering. And lately, I've been reflecting on myself that perhaps because I have such high expectations for myself, that I'm making this too difficult for other people to accept the same thing. But then I also listen to them complain about where they are. So it's very confusing and conflicting to work with different people to who say they want to achieve something and then let's get it down, let's go guns blazing, and then it's like hesitation,
Mm-hmm.
excuses, oh the wife, oh the girlfriend, like it's crazy.
Look, track record is key. And before I go down this line, there's something that you mentioned there, Dr. Thunder. I just wanted to just say one sentence on about also having to do with the track record, right? Having to do with the track record of people, some people you worked with, and all you know about them is that they're not professional. Um, and to anyone that is listening out there, either right now or later on, it is very important, and there are many ways of being professional, and we all fall short one way or the other. In other words, I tend to have perhaps more things on my plate than I should, but one thing I try to do is always be available. Um, in other words, Dr. Thunder, I may forget to send you a link, okay? But if you try to reach out to me, you're gonna get a hold of me, right?
Right.
In other words, I may not be all on the ball, but I'm not gonna be AWOL. I'm not just gonna disappear. I never disappear. You can always get a hold of me one way or the other. That is a way of me compensating for the fact that I know my calendar is just bursting full of crap. I'm not going to be able to be as well organized in all of these. But to your point, Mr. Sebastian, I think that this is a very key thing that you're saying here, which we have all experienced, okay? And my whole thing is that a track record is important. You don't just, it's like I've had several streams now where, let's take, for example, the stream where I talk about, I think it's the one on nodes are primary, and then I used Dr. Thunder and Young Swift and myself and this guy called James, right? And James was the guy that you're describing who talks a lot about how we need to do this and we got to do that and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But I never pay any attention to what people say or what their intentions are or what their pain is, because I don't think that that does anything. What does stuff is or for me, in terms of me judging them, is I look at their track record, right? You want to collaborate with me in music? Well, I need to already see that you've already been doing this stuff without me. It's the same thing that the banks want to see or any investor wants to see. They want to see that you are going to do this thing with or without them. And this is not just a bias of some introvert that doesn't like people, which I am. But it is true that, systems, if you will, banks, investors want to see a track record. They want to see that, hey, you don't really need this money if it's just a question of a loan, for example. You've got collateral and you've got good credit. That is a track record. That shows that you do stuff by yourself. And for me, whenever I'm going to collaborate with somebody, like for example, the COO I just found, he already had his, kind of management company going. He has this company whereby he wants to be able, the goal is he's going to be able to, and now that what you're saying, what comes to mind, I have a couple of people, I mentioned one person before, but there's someone else that I've been talking to, about ideas that he has, not just ideas, but things he has executed and even failed at, okay? He has tried to bring in certain cab services to certain places in Africa, or certain kind of messenger services, and and using an app, and then he got out, he got beat by this other company, so on and so forth. So this is somebody that I know that does stuff, okay? And this is 100% a prerequisite for me, not just for me, but for systems, if you will. Not just some me individual with my biases, but systems that try to invest, okay, that try to collaborate with you. They want to see a track record. They want to be in that situation whereby you can say to them, I'm going to do this with or without you, okay? It'll be great that I'm bringing you in as a partner with me, Mr. Bank, Mr. Co-founder, Mr. Investor, whatever it may be. But I'm going to find someone else. So come hell or high water, I'm doing this stuff, Sebastian, right? And it doesn't have anything to do with this little group we have here or whatever. So I think that this particular thing is absolutely key. And then I'll let you weigh in on it, Dr. Thunder. But you need to go collaborate with people who are already doing things, already done several things, perhaps failed a couple of times, because they're going to have a lot of experience.
Yeah, there's a real practical reason for that. And that is, you want to make sure that the person is serious. Like, this is not just like a flavor of the month, right? This is what it is, right? So if I hire you and then it was a flavor of the month, then you're going to start flaking, and all of that. Okay? I can't have you flaking. I can't afford for you to flake. So, because what it is, this decision is going to affect my family, at least my family, and at most other people's families, the other employees that work for me. I can't mess around. I can't mess around. Yeah, I think that's a strong point. And it's funny because on the other side of that, when you haven't necessarily had much experience managing, it is, because you don't have the context, you might not understand what's actually going on. You probably at that stage, you don't even know enough about yourself to know if you're going to flake or not in that situation, right? So, so they're actually helping you from taking this job or getting into this partnership and then flaking out and just destroying your reputation. So,
Any thoughts there, Sebastian? So far, I think you said you sent me some information on LinkedIn, and we'll collaborate there. I think I have a couple of names that I can link you up with there, and you guys can have conversations about what exactly it is you're trying to do. But also, I think there's quite productive conversation here with nuggets dropped about starting backwards, right? The fact that you want to collaborate with people that that group that you mentioned to me, just I just cringe when I hear things like that. Like, oh, people who want to do stuff. Oh, yeah, really, that thing again. People
Yeah,
who want to do stuff. It's
yeah.
like, no, I want to see. I don't want to hear anything. I already just want to see it being done, and then our paths will cross. I'll ask you. It'll happen. But then also all the stuff about the marriage, and then it being a very clear thing where you're not being superfluous, or shall I say, no, the better word there is redundant, with regards to the roles here. Later on, when you become a big established company, yeah, you need 5 accountants. But right now, each person needs to have a very separate, very well-defined lane, and then power is key. You need to hammer out the power dynamics very early. Like, obviously, I'm the owner and CEO of the company. With this COO guy, he knows where the power lies. And it's quite clear. There is no kind of question about that. He also has the personality type where we can have very direct conversations. In other words, tough conversations, just like a marriage. So, any other thoughts, Mr. Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, great points. I really appreciate both of you guys' feedback. Absolutely, with the notion of being the flavor of the month and going back to the example of the nodes. I remember that very well. And, I've discovered you several months ago. First, I discovered you from Kevin Samuels and getting all involved in that and understanding how to become a Henry. I like I do have that legal background that brings me to that status, but I want lots of passive income coming in too to shoot myself upwards. And I've been in dozens of Google startup weekends. I've been to dozens of networking seminars. I've seen various people create an app and become successful, having moved to Silicon Valley. And by the way, they did forget about me, but I've seen these people rise just from having working with people and being able to and I'd be kind of envious of how they'd be able to just kind of snatch people up along with that. And at that point, it wasn't more so that they started something themselves. It's just that they had an idea, everybody worked on it together, and then it had grown. And I had attempted that twice with my group of friends and acquaintances, and it didn't seem to get kicked off. So I got very frustrated about it. But going back to my statement about meeting you guys, I really do appreciate me being absorbed to your content and Kevin Samuel's content, because in the last several months, I've started a passion project, turned that into a business. I'm working on a second business, and I'm no longer spending that time and energy so much as lifting up all my friends and acquaintances who are bitching about, oh, I wish I was doing this, or I wish I could make money this way. I'm just kind of going my own way. And what I've realized in you particular, and as well as Doc, is that you've, in putting yourself out there to the world, that there seems to be some level of magnetism that gets attracted to you. And things, from what I've witnessed from the two of you, just seem to have jumped off. And I'm trying to get there myself. I'm trying to figure out if there's some type of YouTube niche or content that I can provide, something from my own personal experiences and knowledge. But I just wanted to ask you guys about that co-founding thing, because I've always struggled with finding a group of people who want to get on board.
The magnetism thing that you mentioned is absolutely key. People are going to be attracted to what is rare, and the rarest thing is action. It is not, because I mentioned things like conferences and so on and so forth. That's just to find the pickings, right? But it's going to be the people that are taking action that you need to glom onto, or that people are going to be attracted to. So you talk about going your own way. Dr. Thunder or someone like myself, just personality wise and otherwise as well, we're just the kind of people that are just going to be doing things. And then we're going to be overdoing things. And then stuff is going to start spilling over. And we're going to also put ourselves out there to the last point that you made. And people are going to be like, hey, I can help you with this, or hey, I learned this from you, or can you give me this advice, blah, blah, blah. Can I connect you with this person? Hey, Dr. Thunder says, hey, connect me with Solo TV 84. Connect me with O'Shea Duke Jackson, blah, blah, blah. These things tend to form all these kind of circles whereby productive people whom are doing things can continue to do more and more things. But action is the thing that will attract people to you. So just be acting, right? Just start doing the things that you need to do. Dr. Thunder, it seems like you were going to say something. I cut you off there.
I actually don't think I was going to say something, but I could jump in right here. Sometimes it's just a matter of kind of putting yourself out there. And I'm not naturally a salesman. I had to sort of learn how to be okay with selling myself. As a musician and the kind of musician that I am, there's this sort of romanticization of the starving artist. And the starving artist, it's almost esteemed that if you're broke, then somehow that purifies your art or makes you, there's this kind of thing. And I think that sort of seeps into, it kind of naturally creates this sort of standoffishness about selling yourself or anything that seems that it may smack of commercialism, or if you're making a lot of money, then it's likely that your art is not very good. It's that kind of thing. And so I had to sort of turn that around and decide, okay, I'm gonna look at this differently. And frankly, if it wasn't for the willingness for certain artists that I admire and respect, jazz artists, if it wasn't for their willingness to put themselves out there and to be assertive and aggressive, I wouldn't know who they are, and they wouldn't have impacted me, right? So I could stay in the closet and just practice 12 hours a day, and nobody knows anything about me, right? I could, read all day long and listen to all kinds of audiobooks and all kinds of content and become, super knowledgeable. But, that doesn't help anybody else unless I put myself out there. And the sales part, which, Ike is much better at that than I am. But the sales part, for me, it just started with me first more willing to be assertive and aggressive about putting myself out there, about coming up with a marketing scheme that was catchy enough that people, if they hear it a couple times, it would be like, wait a minute, Dr. Thunder, what's that? I heard that once or twice, and then the rest of it is just, putting myself around, in the arena, putting myself out there, contacting people, and frankly, selling stuff. It'd be like, hey, I have something I think it's valuable. Do you want to buy it? And
100%.
Part of the reason why people won't do that, by the way, is because they don't want to be rejected. And that's facts right there. That's part of the reason why people don't want to sell. And I had to say, okay, is the reason that I don't want to do this because I'm anti-commercialism and blah 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 and all of these other starving artists, goofy stuff, or is it really just because I don't want somebody to say no, and then I'll feel like I'm not worth nothing, and like I can't handle that.
100%, 100%. Yeah, so I'll definitely second the marketing aspect of what you said, which is, putting yourself out there. It's really not about who you know, it's about who knows you and what they know you for. You want to have that reputation that precedes you. Oh, that's Sebastian. I heard about him. Or he moves around in this circle. Oh, you know Sebastian? That kind of a thing. And you never quite know which opportunities that's going to open. And then the sales part, that's practical stuff. I'm not a salesperson. Some people, they're all natural versus not natural, because there are aspects of it which some people may say, well, you're a natural. But I'll grant that in the sense that I'm a performer type. But I'm an introvert, okay? I like to chill, read, work, get stuff done, engineer, conceptualize, whatever, right? But there's a performance aspect to sales, which I just kind of used. And then there's a whole analytical aspect to closing, which is my specialty in selling, because there are many different aspects of selling. There's a prospecting, which involves a lot of backslapping, a lot of caring about people's daughters and their softball game. I don't care about your daughter or her softball game. But there's something very technical about closing. And because of the technicality of it helps me to get over the fear of rejection aspect. In other words, I understand that there's a possibility of a no, but it's such a technical thing where it's like, I don't know how to put it. Well, I do know how to put it. I have a whole series of on selling and so on and so forth. Okay, but I don't want this to devolve into kind of selling tactics. But closing is a technical thing for any introvert out there. Anyone who may think, "Oh, I'm not a natural salesperson," it is more of a skill than you think, and it's also a performance. And any soft skill, as a matter of fact, any communication, whether you're talking to your wife or your son or anyone, is a performance. Communication, speech of all kinds is performative. You don't just throw out any word out of your mouth and say it in whichever way and dress in whichever way. And Dr. Thunder's putting on a jacket right now, okay? He's trying to manipulate you guys, okay? That's why he has a jacket on, right? So everything is an attempt to manipulate. Okay, let's put it in those kinds of stark terms. So if you look at it that way,
I really could have messed you up by having like a white lab coat on. That really would have, like, oh, wait a minute. I should listen to him. That's right. He's got a white lab coat on. It looks like, and my glasses. Let me put my glasses on.
I think a monocle will suit you a lot better.
Monocle, white lab coat. Was he selling toothpaste?
All right, now. See?
Exactly.
That Dr. Thunder knows what he's talking about. Look, he's got
exactly. Everything is like that. I mean, I make all these videos about how be the most comfortable person in the room, how to do everything. When you look at it from this analytical point of view, okay, again, assuming that that's an aspect of yourself that you can harness, right? You can harness the performative aspect, harness the analytical aspect, and just realize that there is a system to things, okay? I go in there, I always make sure that within the first two sentences, you know exactly why I'm there. That makes people comfortable. People think, at the expense of shout out to Alan Roger Curry, Mode 1. Because I think that Mode 1, because Mode 1, you can people push back on it because they're like, oh, I can't say that. It's that kind of that non-intuitive nonsense that people do. It's like he's not putting words in your mouth. He's telling you to be direct. And who the hell ever who you get what I'm saying? It's like, of course direct is better. It's like, be direct. Well, how do I be direct? Well, go think about it, goddammit. Okay, go sit down on the drawing board, and if it goes hand in hand with the whole, if you can't explain it to a 5th grader, then you don't know it, or a 5-year-old, right? Then you don't know it. Same thing with being direct as well. If you can't just come up to somebody and tell them, here's exactly why I'm here, sir, right? In 2 sentences, just like, this is it, then there's something missing. That's mode one. And I believe in mode one when it comes to all kinds of persuasion, because simplicity is always better than complexity. And directness is simpler than indirectness. Indirectness is snaky, serpentine. People don't like that. It makes people uncomfortable. People think it's the opposite. People think if I come to you and I start making small talk about the weather and this and that and the other, that I'm making you comfortable. No, you're making me very uncomfortable with your stupid chatter. But if I came to you and just be like, hey, my name is Sebastian, and I would like you to be a partner in this venture that I'm doing. Do you have 5 minutes? Okay, Sebastian, right? It's like, I'm very relaxed now. Sebastian wants 5 minutes.
Yeah, and the thing is if they say no, fine. You ruled them out. Now you can go on to somebody else. In my mind, the options, when I have too many options, that's when stuff starts to seem to get sort of I start to get more in my head. I start to get more nervous, anxious about stuff. If I know there's only one option, then okay, cool. All right, let me go get this one option. But if there's a bunch of options, hey, that's great to be. The mode one is what's happening. Have you seen any of these gold digger videos?
Oh yeah, the Lamborghini and stuff like that.
Yeah. This is guy named Joel or whatever. He does a bunch of these. Now, one thing about this guy, now granted, it's a little artificial because he's not going to take a rejection as a real rejection anyway, because his agenda is to film. His agenda is not actually to get with the girl. Okay, but one thing I think is interesting, I think you can learn a lot about a lot of the different ways that, in this case, that women will try to reject you, right? And then once those things are sort of demystified, then it's like, well, first of all, he's unrelenting. And even when they start putting those things up, he just switches to a different angle until he finds the angle that either works or that shows that this girl is not going to get with him. And disproportionately, it's a high percentage that are like, get away from me, go away, until he walks over to his car. And then they're like, oh, I didn't know, and then, there's a very small percentage that actually aren't, gold diggers, at least the ones that he shows in his videos. But I'm just saying this to say that those same principles are the same principles, that are alive and well in all of these sorts of human interactions, in sales and in business sort of interactions, when you're trying to develop relationships with folks for, to work. I mean, they're going to have sort of certain kinds of questions and ways to try to reject you, to reject what it is that you're saying. And as you sort of learn how to demystify what those things are, so you hear one of these rejections, it doesn't bother you. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've heard that before. I knew that was coming, and I know what's coming next. Here's the next thing I'm going to say then.
Let me plug in one of my videos about it's. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Overcoming objections specifically, and you can find it out. Go to my playlist on sales, persuasion, or whatever you call it, the sales one, right? Of which I'm going to be putting out more pre-recorded content in that on that coming up. But I talk about overcoming objections, and one of the main things is what you just said, which is you understand. What, first of all, beyond the fact that there's only so many ways that objection can come at you, right? So if you, in particular contexts, right, you mentioned, these are the ways in which a woman can reject you. But if you're selling something, there's only so many ways. Or I got to talk to my wife, or I got to talk to the CFO. That's one way. I got to talk to, there's some other person. That's one way, for example, right? And that comes in many, many different shades. And then there are a few others. But beyond just knowing those, understanding the reason why they're objecting is another thing, which is that the objection is usually covering. There are always layers of objection. People don't tell you exactly why they don't want to do something. They put other things in front of it, and I use the analogy of just be a flame melting the wax away. It is not some kind of complex Rubik's cube puzzle. That's what closing is. Closing is more technical, but overcoming objections is just like a warm little fire that you just have to be next to the wax, melting away layer and layer of objection. So what I tend to do is I say, first of all, I bring up objections, right? You always want to be the first to bring up an objection. So I'll say, well, other than the fact that you've never used us before, is there any reason why you would not consider using our services, right? I already said an objection, which is they've never used us before, okay? And I'm saying, well, and I'm going past it. I'm saying, other than that, okay, is there any other reason why you would not? And they're like, you know what, maybe it's the price. And then you say X, Y, and Z, maybe something to increase the value of the product vis-a-vis price. But then you say, also, other than the price, is there any other reason why you would not? And you're gonna find they're gonna talk themselves into buying, or you're gonna get to that point where they give you the real reason. Okay, their cousin is their current accountant or engineer or whatever, and they're not gonna leave their cousin. And you're like, okay, cool. Now I've whittled things down to the real nugget of objection. Okay, which you can still then try to overcome, or you can back off. But the idea is, taking a couple of steps back to what I mentioned before about selling, is that it is a skill, okay? There's a performance aspect and there's an analytical aspect, one of which is what we just talked about, which is objections. Objections have a certain amount of flavors, and then they are there to protect the real objection at the core. And a lot of that real core objection is emotional, which is not wanting to change and so on and so forth. If you just go in there understanding that this is just another mammal that doesn't like change, then you don't have to be all crazy about it and so on and so. But there's this one, I know we only have a few minutes. There's one thing I wanted us to address, which was a question by SOBC in one of the couple of the past two series, or past two installments of the series. He asked about servant leadership. And servant leadership is that kind of leadership whereby you are looking to serve. My thoughts on it, I'll just kick it off, is that number one, it sounds superfluous, or again, redundant, is I think. In other words, it's like telling you to be a good person. It's like, oh, just be a good person. And I'm like, okay. Take, for example, the things that we've talked about so far in our series. You say, are you type A or type B? Or how do you manage different types of people? Okay. How do you make sure that you manage change? How do you make sure that you don't waste people's time? How do you make sure that you are respecting ideas and always saying yes, so on and so forth? In other words, practical things that have a goal, things that have a structure. And then when you come with this whole kind of servant thing, I'll give it credence. I will steel man the argument, if you will, as opposed to straw manning it, by saying that the one thing I agree with it is, yes, to influence people, you can't be a horrible person. That's just redundant to me, that you have to tell somebody to be not to be a horrible person. And then the other thing is that you need to be there to serve, but to serve in a different capacity, which is the capacity to remove obstacles from your team, right? In other words, what can I do to remove obstacles from the team? In terms of, let's say I'm a mid-level manager or I'm a high-level manager, but I have the CEO's ear. How can I advocate for my team with the CEO, with the board, right? That's how you serve the team. That would be my best way of steel manning that argument. But otherwise, it sounds cringy as hell. That whole servant crap is super redundant to me. Like, stop telling me, oh, be a good person. Go to hell with that. Anyways, Dr. Thun, what do you think?
So the servant leader thing is it's definitely Christianese. It's stuff that you hear in a church context frequently. It's something that I've heard frequently used as a way to make sure that the sort of ministry leaders are not sort of letting the position go to their head, and they're not sort of like lording, authority over other people. Also, I think it's used as a way to try to weed out people that they know that if they were in that position, they want that position not to serve, but because they want to, you know, lord some kind of authority or something over folks, or because they think that if they get higher up in the organization, that they'll be closer to sort of the reins of power, to influence, to having some of these relationships with maybe the pastor or his wife or whatever, and so the servant leader terminology, I think, in a practical perspective, is actually used specifically, I think, to sort of brand the kind of leadership we're talking about. It's a branding. Servant is the brand of the leadership. So I think it's less about what that actually means, because as you said, and as we have discussed in this, what is it, 4-part series? Is it a 4-part series or is it a 3-part series? Maybe this is the 3rd episode. Okay, 3-part series on leadership and management, is that really you have to care about the people that are working for you. And we were talking about this be leader, which is the more effective kind of leader. You want to now granted, a B leader is not as efficient as an A leader. That's one of the reasons why A leadership may be a good style in limited situations. But the B leader actually cares about the employees. There is a sort of selflessness involved. Like you're giving of your time. Like whenever someone has an idea or wants to talk through something, you're willing to listen. You're picking the phone up when people are calling you. You're willing to get your hands dirty. You're willing to learn about all of the sort of tedious, nuanced, little detailed things, so that you can be a better leader, so that you can support the folks that you have, so you can retain them for longer, so that you can see them achieve their full potential, to reach their potential, right? So, as you said, I think that the word servant is not necessary. I just think it's a sort of marketing scheme of itself, of its own. So
it's a marketing scheme, and I like also what you mentioned, that it's a way perhaps of weeding out a certain type. All that kind of stuff puts me off, anyways, because there's the engineer in me, which always just thinks, well, there's a purpose, there's a goal. You're serving the purpose, you're serving the goal. If you cannot clearly, in other words, and then there's better and worse ways of doing that. And these are the ways with which we judge. And all these kinds of softer ways of, are they serving? Let's put it in their head that they should be serving. Just seems another game for people to play. Because now you can come and be the servant, right? I'm the servant, I'm the biggest servant. I wash feet better than the next guy. Like that kind of, and I'm like, I don't care. You could be a selfish bastard, okay? But it does not mean that those things that you mentioned, Dr. Thunder, about caring about the team, picking up the phone and so on and so forth, will not also be present. Because you could be a selfish bastard, but still care about the purpose and serving the goal, okay? Because that not doing that has nothing to do with being selfish. That's just being ineffective. You can be a selfish bastard, but still be very effective, is my point. And the whole kind of, he's got to be a servant, I think, another thing that I need to mention, I think that it serves a certain personality type, and this is my little caveat with my whole ranting here, is that this particular kind of thing perhaps serves a certain personality type, and maybe more of a feeler type of personality. But for me, it's like I completely separate the whole, is this person a servant versus are they effective? And if they're effective, they will care about the goal. If they care about the goal, they know how to treat other people. They're a decent person to begin with. That's like the lowest on the totem pole. Of course, they're a decent human being. Otherwise, they will not even be anywhere near me, right? So that's already a
Right.
given. And then if they're going to be effective, then they know how to treat other people. They know to listen and so on and so forth. And I don't care how much of a soft-hearted servant they are. As a matter of fact, I don't like those soft-hearted servants. So anyways.
Yeah. So this is for Red Sings the Blues. And I actually think, Red, that you meant to put March 28th. Maybe you can put a 1 in the chat if I'm correct in saying March 28th and not April 28th. Just want to make sure. Also, I'm interviewing Red on Conversations with Dr. Thunder tomorrow night. And that video will probably be available Thursday. It'll be available sometime Thursday, but could be Thursday morning. It just depends. I've got a couple interviews tomorrow. One of the interviews that I'm doing tomorrow is with the great guitarist Frank Gambale, who known as the Thunder from Down Under. He's a great guitarist. He's a member of the Chick Corea Electric Band. Chick Corea just recently passed away, and so that I'm sure will be part of our discussion. But he's sort of a, well, not sort of. He's a guitar hero of mine. He's a great dude. Yeah. So Red just confirmed that's March 28th that we're going to have a panel discussion on his channel. Ike and I will be joining him over there. Also, Red, put the name of the other gentleman that's going to be on there.
And we're going to be talking
I think it's Bishop Red Pill, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
That's right. I think it is.
Good.
So anyhow,
that should be fun. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably about ready to wrap it up. This topic is such an important topic. If you're going to deal with people, then there's going to be some sort of orientation that you have if you're, leading them or if you're following them. It's not usual that you're sort of neck and neck. It's usually someone is over the other person, and so learning how to sort of nuance and deal with these kinds of topics is very important if you're going to climb up in a company, if you or if you're ever going to launch your own company. So
100%. Mr. Sebastian Ritchie, do you have any last words? I'm going to do you the honor there, have last word before I close out this third and final installment on this particular topic. And then we'll be having, I believe, in 2 weeks, another installment of the Getting Ish Done. We'll go into some other corner of the forest. But Mr. Sebastian, you got something to say?
Yeah, I see it's closing up right now. I would like to write a question for both of you guys once the video is posted, and it's tying in together what Doc said about people's fear of rejection in trying something, or perhaps a fear in performance anxiety, maybe even, as well as listening to them object to following through on creating something. So I'll leave that question once the video is posted, and if I could just, I would really appreciate both your guys' opinion on it.
Excellent. And perhaps we have our next, right, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. I mean, if you post it in this video, I mean, at least we can deal with it in a couple of weeks when we have another episode.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys, for listening and giving me advice.
You got it, man.
Thank you, Mr. Sebastian. Always welcome here. And thank you again for the super chat that you left earlier. So let me go ahead here and I'll have to give this person a call back. aha. As I said, I always try to be available, and I always leave the message. I will call you back. Ladies and gentlemen, all right. We're going to close this one out. Thank you guys for showing up. Thanks, Red Sings the Blues. Thank you, Mr. Sebastian Ritchie, and everyone who super chatted or cash app. We will be using the funds for this particular show, okay? All right, and we'll be seeing you guys in a couple of weeks where we're going to have the next topic, which perhaps will be related to the presentation, the anxiety, the selling, the overcoming of objections, and so on and so forth. Or we may frame it in a different way in terms of starting something, okay? Starting something, putting yourself out there, whichever kind of topic that relates to getting ish done, which is what this show is all about. So with that, I would like to bid you guys adieu, as they say. Until next time, thank you very much.